everyone. Thank you for joining today's In the Know event with DK. I'm Cassie Turnley, and I'm a part of the Publisher Account Services team with Overdrive, and I have the honor of introducing today's panelists for this informative presentation on how fan favorite DK Star Wars books get made. Before we get things started, I did want to ask that if any attendees would like to submit questions for the Q&A portion of today's presentation, to please submit those throughout the event in the Q&A section, and we will add them to the question queue for Emma and Matt. I will now hand things over to DK's senior publicist, Kristen Fisher, who will get the conversation started with Emma Grange, managing editor of DK Licensing, and Matt Jones, senior editor of DK Licensing. Take it away, Kristen.
Thanks, Cassie, and thank you everyone for joining us today. We're so excited to have you here to talk about DK's Star Wars books, and thank you to everyone at Overdrive for inviting us to have this presentation. As Cassie mentioned, we're here to discuss Star Wars and how DK creates the amazing visual reference books that you and your patrons all know and love. I'm joined today by two of our experts, I'd say, on our DK staff, Emma Grange and Matt Jones, who are going to be able to share their insight and stories on how these books are created and share what it's like to work with Lucasfilm and the rest of the DK publishing team to create these fantastic books. Emma and Matt, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. You're both located in the UK, so I know it's like the end of your day right now, so we really appreciate having you here. I wanted to start by diving into your backgrounds and experience with publishing. How did you get started, and how did you end up working for DK? Emma, I'll start with you.
Yeah, hi. So I'm Emma. I am a managing editor at DK. So I help to oversee all of our Star Wars books, plus some others, Marvel, Disney, DC, all sorts of things. I started at DK 12 years ago now. I did a lot of work experience. I graduated in the recession, or the last recession. And I thought I knew I wanted to get into editorial, but I did some work experience in publicity as well to make sure I really did know that it definitely was editorial for me. And the DK licensing team had a temporary editorial assistant role that they offered to me that I took, and I just stayed because I loved it so much and fell into working on Star Wars books, and yeah, loved it so much that I'm still here now.
Great, thank you so much. And Matt, same question to you. How did you end up at DK and working in publishing?
Hey everyone, delighted to be here. Yeah, I think similar to Emma, I started 9 years ago in DK, and I was an intern, and then yeah, just loved the place, loved the people, always loved Star Wars. So yeah, and then just stayed there, and 9 years later, I'm now a senior editor here. So
wow, so you both have really been with DK for a long time. I'm going to be honest, I don't think I realized that, but that's amazing. So you've really had a lot of experience working on a really wide variety of the books that we publish. And, you know, you've worked with all different licensors, all different books, licensed and non-licensed. So, you know, books that are just kind of made up by an author or a staff, or, you know, the books that are kind of coming from an existing brand or partnership. So what I wanted to ask you both was, how is working on and editing a licensing book like a Star Wars book different from editing non-licensed? Like, how does the whole process work? I know that these are really unique and special books, so would love to dive a bit into that. And Matt, I'll start with you since you are senior editor.
Sure. I must admit, I've not actually worked on too many, if any, non-licensed books, but just always been Star Wars, but yeah, and Marvel and Disney and all the other amazing licenses. But I think it's what's great about working on licensed books. One of the many things that's superb is that you've got people that are experts that know how everything works, how it happens, and they're all just as passionate about bringing amazing books to the fans. So I think that's what's really superb, is you've got that inbuilt support straight away. So you know.
And Emma, I'll kick it over to you. How is it for you? I know you work with a lot of different licensors.
Yeah, I definitely have. And I think a lot of what Matt's saying is really true. We have a very special way of working with licensed books in DK, in that we kind of treat it like it is non-fiction, that it is real, and that's how our books approach all of our subject matters, that here is a lightsaber, this is how it works, this is the Jedi that uses it, and that's a very unique way of working, and I don't think you see that anywhere else. But it can be then surprising when you are working on a real world book to then think, oh no, this is a real house in a real place and not one that George Lucas invented in a galaxy far, far away. So it's always fun. We're always making those adjustments of going from working on one type of book to working on another type of book. But I think that the way that we treat all of our subject matter, no matter what it is very much coming from the same place of trying to educate and inform, and hopefully get small kids to learn to love reading and to get grown-ups to learn to love the subject matter as well, whether it is a Star Wars subject or gardening or whatever else it might be that we do here at DK. Board games, for example, which is also something that we have done, all sorts.
Amazing, I love that. And yeah, it really is, our books truly are reference titles for everything, whether it's a fictional world or a real life world. It's just kind of interesting to see how deep we go into some of those subjects at times. So going off of that, we have so many Star Wars books, and for basically all ages, everything from, I feel like, the youngest readers to fans who've been through the series their entire lives. And what I want to discuss with both of you too is, how do these ideas for the Star Wars books we publish come to life? How does that process work? Is this something internal, external? There's been such a variety of books, and sometimes I'm even like, oh, how did we come up with that? So would love to hear more about that. And I think, Emma, I'll start with you on that question.
Yeah, so we're really privileged at DK to have a really close working relationship with Lucasfilm and with Story Group, who are the people who sit right at the center and invent a lot of the stories, as you'd imagine from the phrase Story Group, but the stories that go out into the Star Wars galaxy, into the world. And we have a lot of conversations with them about the sorts of books that we'd like to do, or the sorts of books that they'd like to do that they think that we would do well. And we have those conversations every year, and a lot of those books we do end up making. We also have a team that's full of, and I say this very fondly, full of nerds, and we all, I think, know what sort of Star Wars books we'd like to see. So we're always brainstorming and pitching ideas of the things that we'd like. So it's from within our own team, but also those wider conversations. And we also actually sometimes receive ideas from fans from Twitter or from social media, or Kristen, I think you've sometimes sent us ideas. So really, we're always polling the fans to see what they'd like and for what we'd like to do as well. And Matt, I know that you've also had some ideas that have also made it onto the publishing list. So,
which is great. Yeah, it's such a lovely place for that. There's so many ideas where, we're just looking out and seeing what's around, and also just, we've got so many established formats at DK for so many different age ranges. So, from readers all the way up through to massive adult titles that span hundreds of pages. So it's really great having that variety that we can work on. And, it's you can just think, oh, what have we not done for this license that would work really well, or vice versa. So yeah, it's really cool.
I love that. I was going to say, I don't know if I've ever come up with a Star Wars book idea, but having gone to Celebration and a bunch of the Comic-Cons, we are definitely always receiving ideas from fans about what might work for a Star Wars book. So it is fun to see those ideas sometimes come to being. So going off of that, Matt, I think this is a question for you, since you are so often in constant communication, I'd say, with the team at Lucasfilm and the Story Group. What's it like working with Lucasfilm? How do you collaborate with the editorial team over there? I know it's such a massive team for people working on all of the franchise, movies, TV shows, etc., everything that comes out. Just curious how that process works.
Yeah, sure. Oh, it's amazing. They're so invested in our titles, and it's so lovely. So, we have frequent calls with the editorial team. So they're kind of the editors over there that will be kind of shepherding the book through Lucasfilm and showing it to all the people. So weekly calls with them and constant emails flying across the pond. And yeah, it's really just collaborative. So we'll start on a synopsis for a book, and that's kind of where we really firm up what we're going to fit into the book and how it's going to work and how we kind of see the book looking. And because we've got such a great design team over here, it's at that point where we'll look through kind of how we want the book to look, and we'll send some samples to Lucasfilm, and it goes through to various, we make the book, which is quite a lot that goes in there, but then Lucasfilm will kind of always be there to help, and they'll oversee looking over the book at multiple times, and we'll take in their comments, and then we see it off the print, and then we can all celebrate when it's in our hands as a finished product.
I love that. And I know how much back and forth there can be sometimes. There's so many details and so much that's, they're the experts that I feel like it's always just making sure we have everything correct and right. And there's so much involved right there. It's, it's its whole universe, basically. I can't even imagine how much information you're going through all the time to make sure.
Yeah, there is a lot, and it's so amazing that there's so many experts around, which is so handy, because it's the amount of vehicles that have blasters, and are they a tri-blaster or a dual blaster? There's so much in Star Wars, and it's stunning. So it's so great to have all those experts over there that can help us and know exactly where to tweak something to make sure it's accurate.
Oh, exactly. So moving on to some of the books, since we kind of started talking about the process behind them, I'd love to know what your favorite Star Wars project is that you've worked on. So I think I'll start with you, Emma.
It's a really hard one to choose because we've worked on so many, but I do think some of the ones that are often the most rewarding for many reasons are the embargoed film tie-in titles that we've worked on. And I had the honor to work on our Rogue One titles, which was obviously very highly embargoed, very confidential, and actually involved going over to San Francisco to visit Lucasfilm and to meet them in their offices, to meet the publishing and the editorial team, and to meet Story Group, and one of whom was writing the book. And that was a real privilege and a real help, because it was so collaborative that we got to do that, to work on the synopsis whilst out there and plan the book out. And then we came back with all this secret knowledge that we had to hide away with and be very careful with, and just produce a book that we were all really proud of in the end. So I think that was my highlight.
I love that. I remember that book. I was here at DK when that was coming out, and I had no idea what Rogue One was for a very long time, but wonderful to see that come to light, and very exciting, I feel, because it was so secretive for so long. Matt, what would you say your favorite project you've worked on is?
There are so many, it's hard to call. It's really difficult. I think probably one of my favorites was actually when I first started, and I just had to watch Star Wars for a couple of weeks. I was working on planning our first edition of Ultimate Star Wars, and I literally just sat there, got the DVDs, found a DVD, used to plug DVDs in like it back in those days. We didn't have it all kind of virtually online. So I planned out a massive encyclopedia full of all these Star Wars bits and pieces, and that was pretty cool.
That's amazing. Yeah, getting told that for work you get to watch Star Wars all day sounds like honestly a dream come true.
I didn't believe it. So lucky.
It is very strange to sometimes explain to people what our job is, but that is sometimes what it is.
Oh no, I feel you. It's because you do need to know the content. You need to know everything. You kind of have to become an expert in the best way that you can be to notice things and be aware of things. Going off that, and if you don't have one, no worries, but I'm like always fun to ask, do you have like a favorite Star Wars memory from your time at DK? Like something and Emma, I guess going to Lucasfilm already is pretty cool in and of itself, but figured I'd go off of that and ask if you had whether it's a convention or meeting an author or person, just really fun to hear about all of this.
Well, when we did the Rogue One books, that was the last time also that the Star Wars Celebration convention was in the UK. So we got to go to that. So that was pretty exciting to see all the fans, to see all the cosplay and everyone. One of the best bits, I think, about our job is seeing fans with the books and engage with what we've spent often months and months and months putting a lot of time into and enjoying it. And so seeing them come to signings or to meet the authors or to go to a panel or dressing up in amazing, very impressive cosplay outfits. That was a pretty cool event, and we're looking forward to being back in the UK again this year as well and repeating the experience.
Amazing. I'm jealous I can't go. And Matt, I'll pass it over to you.
Just to echo Emma's point, it's so lovely to meet all the fans and go to conventions. And the last one, I think at Celebration, I was hugged by Jabba the Hutt, which was great. It was an amazing moment. He wasn't slimy, as you would expect. And and then I also got a CD from a fan for the music, which was lovely. So really, it's so nice to meet the fans. And we're often working away in our offices, and it's nice to get out there, and especially after the pandemic.
Oh yeah, I agree. I was able to go luckily last year. I think was the first Celebration back for a while, and the Star Wars fans are just so wonderful. And I know that we've done some events with libraries before too, where everyone's shown up in costume and just so excited to celebrate and really dive into the fandom. And it's just so fun to be around that energy. Okay, I'm looking at my questions. So I wanted to dive in a little bit into one of our new books coming out in April. This is the book that we kind of teased a little bit in our promoting this event, just because we are so excited about it. Star Wars Timelines. I would honestly say it's probably one of, if not the biggest Star Wars book that we'll ever be publishing, or at least to this date. So I wanted to dive in, and I'll start with the basics, but I guess we'll say, what is Star Wars Timelines? How would you explain this book to someone? I've been trying to do that myself as doing the publicity for it, and it's hard to encapsulate. So would love for some insight from both of you who worked on it directly.
It is definitely the biggest book that we have ever succeeded in putting together. It is, as I hope the name suggests, a complete timeline of Star Wars history, starting all the way back in the High Republic, and then running all the way up to the very end of Episode 9. So everything that you've ever seen or not seen put out on screen, but also from comics and books and the Disney Plus series. And we had a whole host of authors working on it, a lot of experts. We worked closer than we've ever worked before with Story Group and with Lucasfilm to put it together. I unfortunately don't have a prop to show you, but it does look absolutely beautiful, and we're very excited to see it coming out this year. I've already shown it to a lot of our colleagues, and one of them, she said to me that it was the sort of book she was going to gift her boyfriend and then not see him for a week, because he was going to spend the whole week just poring over it from cover to cover to find out when everything happened and where it took place. And I hope that that's true for a lot of fans, and that it delivers on that front. But Matt worked very intensely on it, so he can also speak more to its creation and its scope.
I think that's a perfect summary, Emma. But yeah, it was such an amazing book to put together. It was, I was really knee deep in Google Sheets, and with all the authors trying to plan out everything, and working hand in hand with Story Group to kind of figure out what happens when, and where can we fit everything in the book, because I think it's about 352 pages from memory, but there's a lot of Star Wars to fit in there. So and we've also got some really wonderful spreads that focus on some of the key characters. You can really track their stories through the saga, and some vehicles. So Leia's got a lovely kind of spread, as does the Millennium Falcon, and lots of other cool insights that you can see from drawing a little bit further out and picking one thread through this massive tapestry that is Star Wars.
No, I really like the honing in on specific parts too. I know that one of the spreads that I believe is online, or was first shown at Celebration, is the lightsaber, I believe, and kind of going through a timeline of even just lightsabers in the Star Wars universe, which is so interesting, and just it's fun to kind of dive deep into that and then go back to the full array of everything that's happening in the Star Wars universe and saga. So going off of that, a lot of our viewers are probably familiar with a book that's a little similar, Star Wars Year by Year. So I thought it would be great to kind of discuss a bit about how this is different. Both are based off of timelines, I guess you could say, but they feel like such different books to me, but would love for some insight and guidance for, as people are building their collections, what the differences are.
Yeah, Yeah, sure. So I worked on the last edition of Timelines. No, sorry, I've got them confused myself. Year by Year. Last edition of Year by Year, which came out in 2021 from memory. And that's actually an out of world perspective on kind of Star Wars and Lucasfilm, and kind of how the films and the whole franchise and global phenomenon has kind of happened over the decades. So yeah, it's very much out of world, and then this is very much in world for Timelines. So yeah, it's a different approach, but yeah, there's still so many interesting bits in that, and it's just amazing seeing. I love the merchandise pages in that book, and just seeing the sheer like fascinating things that have been created that you'd never expect.
No, it's so interesting, especially like it's fun from a DK perspective too, kind of taking the historical approach too, as like what's happening and what's happening on screen, just aligning those. I think it's really an interesting way to look at it, but definitely shows the differences between the books though, because obviously one is a bit more based in I'd say like current life, current reality, and then of course Star Wars and the developments there. So going into that too, when we've kind of touched on this, and I see a question actually just came through about this, what is it like working with so many authors? So on Timelines, we actually have 5 authors on here: Jason Fry, Cole Horton, Kristen Baver, Amy Rochelle, and Clayton Sandell, all of whom I have worked with personally, and I feel like have such different backgrounds from Star Wars. And it's so interesting to see so many different people and voices coming together to work on a book. So I'd love to hear like how that works. I'll start with that. I feel like I have another question, but let's start with that question.
Sure. Well, it's really just so wonderfully collaborative. It was so great to have all of them on board for this book. So, we broke it up by chapter for this book, just so everyone could have their own like kind of specialist area to focus on. So, which was so handy because there was so much going on. So, yeah, so it was just having everyone on an email chain and keeping everyone connected, and they're really collaborative between themselves and checking in. Or there's a lot of flashbacks and I don't know if there's flash forwards, but anyway, if they're reading a comic and we're like, oh, that crops up in another chapter, they'd let the author know. So it was a lovely group that all really gelled well together, I'd say. So yeah, and it was just then from there just kind of corralling the book together and just working on the spreads and getting it all out, and they were just invested to the end, and really were there to help when there were the kind of harder queries, or that what year exactly does this one thing happen. And yeah, they were really great at working with Story Group on that.
That's wonderful. And I think another question just to follow up that I feel like these authors have told me before, but just interested to hear from your perspective, Matt. Is there a lot of conversation like while the book's being written, or is everyone kind of given their section to work on, and then it's more so maybe email conversations with you as opposed to a group email chain with all 6 of you plus whomever else?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it does vary from book to book, I would say, but I think for this one there was a lot of collaborative emails, kind of various like tweaks and approach of how we approaching this, how we approach versus how we're approaching I don't know, event that is estimated, for example, versus an event where we know exactly when it happened. So yeah, and then I think there's kind of more one-to-one emails on a specific chapter or a specific spread. So yeah, it was a real mix, and I would say it was really superb that how invested everyone was in making sure this is just the best book it can be.
No, it's so exciting. I can't wait till I get to see it. We haven't gotten copies in our office in New York yet, so excited to finally get my hands on one. Moving on to my next question. This is more a library specific question, but thought it would be fun to ask here. Do you have any ideas or suggestions on how librarians can best utilize our Star Wars books with their patrons or in library programming? I know, as I've said, we've helped support previously with like some May the 4th things, and making sure that these Star Wars books are being read and used with the children's programming especially, but would love some insight you might have as you're so close and, you work with these books directly. Any ideas that have ever come to mind for you or thoughts you might have on that?
Yeah, definitely. I think we've talked a lot here about adult encyclopedia titles, but we do also do a lot of kids publishing, and that is really ideal. I mean, they're all ideal for library events, but Matt and I have both written Star Wars leveled readers. I don't know if Matt's got one that he can just wave as a prop, but which are really perfect for getting kids to learn to love reading. And in the past, I've done a few events where I've gone to spaces like libraries and done readings for kids, and those are really fun and engaging. And I tried to get all the children to cheer for the Jedi and boo for the Sith, but they wanted to do it the opposite way round. And it's just really fun to get to, just really engage with children in those spaces. And you've mentioned already May the 4th and Star Wars Reads Days. There are some really great campaigns and programs out there that can be harnessed, and then all of our books can be used for those events. And then there are lots of worksheets and all sorts of resources out there that can be used alongside our books to get the most out of them, and to bring in, certainly I'm thinking, our youngest fans for those events. But we love libraries. We love how engaged you are with our books, and it's just, from my point of view, it's the perfect partnership, really.
No, that's great. And I think really, there's so much that can be done. I feel like even just, maybe using a spread to come up with a craft or something like that. There's so many ideas, and we have just such visual books that I think they really can lend themselves to really fun ideas and unique ways to include in the library programming. Okay, so I'm going to some more questions. So I think this is something we kind of touched on a little bit, but I think it would be interesting to talk a bit further, and we could use timelines as an example if you wanted, or any book. But how long is the process for coming up with one of these books, from maybe like idea to finished product? Like, what's that timing like? I kind of know a little bit, but I'd love to hear like firsthand, like, what are we talking about? Is it months, years? What's the situation?
I'm now thinking of the "it's been 83 years" meme. No, it's not that long. But yeah, I would say it can be, again, it can vary book to book, but I think the timeline specifically, that was probably one of the most involved books we worked on. I think we started that at the end of 2021. Emma, that's correct, isn't it? Yes. What is time? It can really vary, but it's kind of from the coming up with the idea, and then it's kind of the working through the synopsis, and and then it can be a couple of months to making the book, to maybe longer if the book's more involved, and then there's probably about 2 months or so where we kind of sit and approve the book with Lucasfilm and take all the tweaks in and get all the final stages ready for publication. So it can really vary on some of the smaller books like the readers. There's a lovely Grey Goose Galaxies coming out next in a couple of months, which is a lovely little reader. I think that's 24 pages, so that wasn't as long. Probably a few months of approvals.
Yeah, I feel like there's just so much involved there. And, kind of going off of this, we've been asked by a few people right now, how does the fact checking process work? How do you make sure that like what you're including is correct? How does that process work working with Lucasfilm?
Yeah, sure. I mean, Story Group is such a superb resource. They know absolutely everything, or will find somebody that does if they don't, but I don't think that ever happens. So they know you're kind of, there's so many, just the spellings, there are so many Star Wars words, and they know exactly how all of them are spelled. And there's the risk of, I think, there's a Roos Tarpals and a Ruse somebody else, and extra E or not can mean a completely different character. So so it's having the Story Group there, that expert resource. And then but I'd also say that Emma and I have picked up a lot of knowledge over our times here, and our authors are all just such amazing experts as well. So hopefully we catch everything before print.
Amazing. Yeah, I know. That's my biggest struggle too, I will say. Even talking to fans at shows and stuff, there's so many names and so many sound alike, and planets sound the same, but it is such a breadth of knowledge that I feel like it's so lovely to have a group of experts that we can just kind of go to directly to be like, please help, please clarify this. And you two, I feel like, must definitely be experts in at this point after Emma, you're saying no. You're a level of expertise, I would say.
It's the galaxy is always changing, Kristen. New things are happening all the time, and yeah, it's accidental experts, but not really. I don't think I'll be going on a quiz show to try and answer any questions professionally. Yeah.
I feel that completely. Another question that's come up that I'm seeing is about the authors again. So do you have any insight into maybe the author's writing process? I've gained a little bit just by conversations with some of our authors, but would love to know if you've heard like how they might be working or putting these books together. Just any insight you might have there.
I feel like, again, it probably really varies book to book. I'm sure Matt's going to agree with me. I think all of our authors, as we've said, have got really different backgrounds themselves, and they've got quite a lot of different expertise in different areas of history, or whether it's Clone Wars or the High Republic or the original trilogy or something like that. We've also got coming out in April a book called Star Wars 100 Objects, and that was a very different book. It's a collection of 100 key objects from the galaxy, and that one involved the author who does work for Lucasfilm. She went behind the scenes to gather loads of props from the archives and talk to the people who made them and looked at them, and that was a very different process to Timelines, which, as Matt has already said, had a massive spreadsheet and all that collaboration, and was a lot more spreadsheet based than probably running Word text. So very different approaches.
And I think, and sometimes we can have our we're known for our visual dictionaries and those kinds of formats, which are so inherently visual that, we tend to work with our designers to lay out spreads of what we'd like to focus on, who's cropping up on this page. Is it Obi-Wan's spread? Is it Qui-Gon Jinn's spread? And then we'll send those with placeholder text to the authors, and then they can have a play and be like, oh, no, I think I'd rather talk about this or talk about that. And then they'll send us the text and we'll form it into a spread. So yeah, it can really vary for all the books, but that's what's so great about DK and our team, is that we just work on so many different types of amazing books.
No, that's great. I feel like there must be, like we said, so many different authors, so many backgrounds, so many ways of writing. I'm sure that some people go back and watch everything that has to do with that topic that they have for Star Wars, and others might be, diving into previous DK books or other books by other publishers, kind of getting all that insight. So I can see, there's just so much to pull from that. It's both, I'm sure, really exciting to dive in and also a little overwhelming at times. So I'm looking at some more of our questions. This is a bit more general, but do you have any advice, since you're both editors and you work with so many authors, do you have advice for anyone who might be interested in writing a Star Wars book or getting published? What you would suggest that they do, or advice you might have for someone interested in breaking into the industry?
Yeah, I guess the advice is normally the same. It's just keep trying. I think that's the thing, first of all. We work with a lot of authors who are themselves fans, who have come to our attention through one way or another, or they've been writing journalist articles, or they've been doing other sorts of Star Wars freelance writing that we've become aware of, or and then maybe they've ended up writing on one of our books for us, which is absolutely fantastic. So, and I don't know if Matt and I ever imagined that we would be writing leveled readers that was Star Wars themed for kids. So sometimes things happen by complete happenstance as well. But I would say keep trying at it, and keep certainly in the fields that you're interested in, to try and get yourself out there a bit.
I love that. I know it's a hard process to get started in, but I feel like it is kind of just getting your name out there. Okay, I see another question came through. So let's see, I'm just looking quickly about how you both started working with Lucasfilm. So I don't know if you have any stories maybe about like first time, or what it was like as you kind of got started. I know that you've said that you had to watch a bunch of movies. Just curious, like, what was that first experience like working with them?
Oh yeah, it's so superb. I'm trying to think. I think Lucasfilm and DK have had such a long partnership that is, I think, going must be about 20 years now at least. So so I think for me it was just so I couldn't actually believe that I was there and working on Star Wars. These books that I had as a kid and loved as a kid, and were on my bookshelf still at home, and then to see them to actually be working on new editions of them. So yeah, I think it's just great that there's that really strong relationship and foundation for all these amazing books.
Yeah, I think the first Star Wars book I worked on in a team was a sticker book for The Phantom Menace. And I think it's actually an anniversary for that film next year, which makes me feel very old. But that was the very first thing that I worked on. And that's obviously a very different sort of book again. Yeah, so we cover a whole range on our team.
Amazing. Well, this is just a fun question that came through, but have to ask because I always love to hear this about people's opinions. What would you say your favorite Star Wars movie is? I know, tough question.
It's so hard. I think Emma and I might have the same one, but I might be wrong. I really love Rogue One. I think it's just such a stunning film, and I just loved the approach, and I just remember watching it in the cinema. We kind of went to a midnight screening, some of us, and yeah, it was so superb. And I just loved the expanse of it and how much it covered. And yeah, I think that's why I love Rogue One. But all of them are really good. Interests of transfer. What I can't remember what the movie. Anyway, Emma, I'll pass over.
Such a diplomatic answer, Matt.
Yeah.
My answer is also Rogue One. I always feel like I'm a little bit biased because I worked on the books, but you never really know if the film is going to turn out to be as good as you hope when you're working on the books, because you haven't actually seen any of it. You're just working on this book with all these images and hoping, but I did really hope that it would be a good film, and it did turn out to be, in my opinion. It is my favorite. And we had to sort of keep the secret. We knew how it was going to end, and I won't spoil it in case anybody here hasn't seen it, but working on the book, we did actually in that case know how it was going to end, and I had to try and hold that secret to myself for about 9 months until the film came out, until we all went to see it, and I was desperate to tell people and I couldn't. So it was really fun, as Matt says, to go and watch it at midnight with the team, some people who'd work on the book, some who hadn't, and for us to all experience it together and then to see their shock at the end. So
I feel that. I think we went as a team to see that movie too at DK, and I was surprised. No one told me the ending. So going off of that, another fun question before I get into a few more additional ones is just, who would you say your favorite character is in the Star Wars universe?
Oh, there's so many. Again, I think I really love Breha Organa, who is Leia's adoptive mother. There's a really amazing book called Leia, Princess of Alderaan by Claudia Gray, and I just love kind of her backstory, and so little of that character is seen in the films, yet she's got such a massive presence across the whole saga through the work that she does, and through Leia, of course. So yeah, I think she's probably my favorite.
And I feel like mine is a tie between either Jyn from Rogue One or General Leia herself. I just think in terms of bossing it, I respect her a lot, and for leading the resistance, yeah, I look up to her.
I love that. Two very strong characters chosen by both of you. So I'm like, good choices, everyone. Another fun question that came up is, what would you suggest is the best way to bring someone into the Star Wars universe? Maybe someone who hasn't, been exposed to it really much at all, and someone thinks that they'll really get into it. I know we have a lot of books that can help with that, but would love to hear like what you think is the easiest way, or what books might be best to recommend to maybe like a patron coming to the library and they really want their kid to get into Star Wars, or a kid who wants their parent to get into Star Wars.
Great question. I think again, there's so many. I would say if they're kind of younger, then readers can be a lovely way. You know, we also do Lego Star Wars readers, so if they're perhaps more familiar with the Lego Star Wars stuff, which is kind of an entry point for a lot of kids, I think, into Star Wars nowadays. And yeah, we do a full range of wonderful Lego Star Wars books. But then, you know, slightly as they grow older, we do some lovely other formats, like here's another prop, the Mandalorian Handbook, which is kind of really quite flippable and dippable, and you know, it's aimed at slightly older kids, and it's kind of just lots of fun facts and interesting bits and pieces about various characters, and had a lot of fun writing that one. So I think at the younger end of the spectrum, it's kind of books like that. But to read to adults, if it's maybe they're really into vehicles in the real world, and we've got some lovely books on the Star Wars vehicles, or you know, maybe they really love kind of the locations and shoots and films, and we've got books that speak to that, like Complete Locations, where you can really delve into how the set, well, it's in world again, but you can see how the sets have been illustrated by wonderful artists. So I think there's so many books to kind of go for. I think there's even one called Star Wars 101 in America, and that was very much aimed at people that didn't know where to begin in Star Wars. So that's a great book to get if somebody's older and doesn't knows who Darth Vader is and C-3PO are, but perhaps not exactly who they are or why they're important.
Perfect. Yeah, I was gonna say, I think it's actually Star Wars Made Easy here.
Oh.
There's so many, but I'm like, UK, US versions, we never know. But that was actually the first, my first like touring Star Wars book that I worked on, which was fun. So I learned a lot about Star Wars that way. So I can highly recommend that book myself. But I think those are all the questions we've received so far. And I think as long as nothing comes through in the next like minute or so, I just want to say a big thank you to both of you, Emma and Matt. It has been such a pleasure talking to you today and really getting into the Star Wars universe and all of DK's Star Wars books. I think it's been great getting insight too on the editorial process and your experiences working on Star Wars books. I know that everyone here, it's been so interesting, and we're excited to have this recording that will be available to share with people who weren't able to make it live today. And just, I wanted to send a big thank you to Cassie and the Overdrive team for having us at DK here. It's been so lovely just talking about this and so much fun. And I hope that you both have enjoyed yourselves as well. I will say, if you want to say anything before we close out, I can pass it back to you too, but keep me posted.
I'd just say it's just a real privilege to get to talk about our Star Wars books, and we're very fortunate to get to work on books on subjects that we really love, and we love to get the feedback from people who also love to read them and engage with them at the opposite end of the spectrum. So thank you very much for having us.
100% completely echo all of that. It's been a pleasure, and yeah, thank you for all the work you do in libraries, just getting the books out there. And you know, it's really important for all of us here to get, you know, more people reading and more kids reading. And I think that's what's so great about Star Wars in libraries is, you know, people recognize these characters and hopefully gravitate towards them. So yeah, thank you very much.
Oh, and there was one more question that came in actually that I think is a great one that we should ask quickly before we sign off, which is about our Star Wars books getting translated into other languages.
Yes, definitely.
So yeah, I was going to say, feel free to take it away. I know that there's a variety, but you all know the exact information. I don't want to give wrong information.
Yeah, no, we are a global company, so a lot of our books get translated into a lot of other languages. I don't know where it is best to find out that information, but quite often your local bookseller sites will let you know. So, but yes, they get translated into all sorts of languages all around the world.
Yes, amazing. Well, thank you all for coming, and thank you to all of the librarians who tuned in today. We all appreciate you and what you're doing and getting our Star Wars books in the hands of patrons, and getting people reading. It's been wonderful to talk to everyone today and to have you listening in. Thank you again for joining, and wishing you a great rest of your Tuesday and a great rest of 2023. We're like at the second month in, so more good things to come this year. But it's been a pleasure talking to everyone. Have a good rest of the day.